Hey guys, hope everything's going well. You guys know the drill. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and comment down below. Follow me on Instagram at AIH_sports. Alrighty, I got this one sports card in my mail the other day. 2004 Topps Total, number 350, Eli Manning, PSA 10. Bought this for approximately $30. This is part of my Hall of Fame strategy. Now, a few years ago, when everything was cheap, I was targeting guys like Brady. I was targeting guys like Manning, Derek Jeter. I was targeting Aaron Rodgers and Scherzer, Kershaw, Verlander. Those guys that would be first ballot Hall of Famers. Now, I'm looking at, okay, we're right now hopefully at the end of the pandemic, and a lot of cards have come down, but still they're pricey in my opinion. So I'm looking at cards, okay, what is a player that's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and also what cards are cheap. So I bought this at about 30 bucks. Last year is about 100 bucks, so we have a 70% haircut. I find that to be an attractive deal. And if this card goes down, because people say, oh, you talk about a crash, why are you buying? Well, if it goes down to what, $15, I'm still going to buy this card. And ultimately, the cost of grading, if it goes back to normal levels, what, $20? Shipping is what, $10 both way? So I still bought this card less than the cost of just sending this card out to PSA. So I consider this to be a deal. And right now, the regular service is what, $100. So I personally find this to be a deal. Eli Manning won twice against Brady. He won 2 MVPs. So I believe that if he becomes a Hall of Famer, this card will go up. And I looked at all these guys in the Hall of Fame. I was buying Jeter, I was buying Manning, and people were buying them up right before they got inducted to the Hall of Fame. This was like a few years before they got inducted. And I noticed this when I bought a Mariano Rivera card, and once he got announced, this card just went so high. So I should have sold it at that time, but I didn't. Regardless, I wanted to get into the video now, and it's 2022 versus 2020. This is my second try at the video. I was just rambling on my last video, so I just want to stay focused here. Okay, so what is the difference between 2020 versus 2022? I touched bases on this in numerous videos, but I didn't compare the years. So 2020, the Federal Reserve was lowering interest rates in February of that year. They had interest rates at 1.5%, and then because of the financial crisis or the pandemic, they lowered interest rates, and when you lower interest rates, you increase money supply. So you have all this monopoly money. This monopoly money then went into the stock market, into sports cards, into cryptos, etc. While some people may say, hey, sports cards were going up before the pandemic. Yes, but there's another catalyst, and that was the Federal Reserve with the funny money. It was the US government giving people stimulus checks. And in 2020, also, the Federal Reserve started to buy up bonds, treasuries, $80 billion per month in June, and also $40 billion in mortgage-backed securities. They did that from June of 2020 to the end of December of last year. Okay? So you had all the stimulus keeping interest rates low. So now the Federal Reserve has signaled they are going to raise interest rates. Part of the reason why the market went down this week, the stock market, is because traders, got freaked out and they decided to sell because they're going to raise rates most likely as early as March. So this year, 2022, going back to the present, we're in a rising interest rate environment. That doesn't mean all the sports cards are going to go to zero. No, they're not. But now we're going to go from, we were in a negative interest rate environment, which is more beneficial for collectibles. And now those interest rates going to go up, and we're on the way towards positive interest rates, but that's not going to happen probably for a little bit. Positive interest rates are not good for collectibles, and that doesn't mean that every sports card, once again, is going to go to zero. It just means it's going to be more and more challenging environment. And how do I look at negative interest rates? I look at the 10-year TIPS yield, where you look at the 10-year inflation rate versus the, 10-year treasury, and then you subtract the 10-year expected inflation. So when they announced that they're going to raise the interest rates, the 10-year expected inflation went down, and the 10-year interest rates went up. So right now, if the trend continues in the coming year and a half, we're on the path towards higher interest rates and positive interest rates, which in my opinion is not good. So therefore, my strategy has been completely different from 2020, 2021, 2019, 2018. I was more aggressive, right? And I wasn't on YouTube. That'd be interesting if I were on YouTube at that time, because then people could see where my mind was at that moment. But now, I'm just making calculated plays. And I've told you that I like taking not aggressive risk as of this moment. I want to be like Mac Jones right now. You know, high accuracy, especially when he was at Alabama. 77% completion rate. I like watching Kyle Hendricks of the Cubs. Very methodical. He doesn't throw that hard, but he gets people out. And Greg Maddux even likes watching Hendricks. The only thing with Kyle Hendricks is he doesn't throw hard enough. That's why he's not a Cy Young guy. Regardless, going back to this. So, what are the other differences besides the lack of stimulus this year? I would say that 2020 was a very chaotic year. People may say, oh, right now is chaotic, but we still have more of a normalized life now. I mean, some offices are definitely opening up. Now, some people still are working from home. I'm working from home right now, but we have the option of going to the office. Before, they were like, don't come to the office at all. But 2020 was probably the most chaotic years that most Americans have dealt with. I was listening to some talk show hosts in their 70s, and they said they've never seen anything like this. And they've been through a lot. You know, they grew up right around post-World War II. So they've seen a lot of crazy things, you know, in the 60s, the 70s. And, I mean, if you remember, there was chaos all over America. There was, you know, many stores being robbed, being looted, a lot of smashing of windows. There was chaos. And one way that I took my mind off of all of that stuff was I was buying all these sports cards. It was a great distraction from reality. And many people did the same thing as me. And now, I mean, people still argue about what's going on in our society, but it's not as chaotic. Okay, it may be hard getting a COVID test at some places in this country, but that's about it. It's not chaotic. It's not in the same manner as it was back then. So, if you look at it, less chaos this year. You can go to a sports game. A few years ago, you couldn't go to a sports game. Only time you could go to a sports game was maybe during the World Series. And I think that was in Texas, I believe, or San Diego. I don't remember where it was. And it was only a limited capacity. You couldn't go to a football game in 2020, late 2020. Now you can go to a football game. Stadiums are packed. So you have less income that's available for sports cards because people are doing regular activities like going to games, going on vacations. A lot of people are scared. People are still scared now, but I don't think it's as bad as it was back then. Yeah, some flights are getting canceled right now, but that will probably change within the next month or so. February, March, things should hopefully be getting back to normal in terms of the flights. So, just on those two notes, there's a huge difference in 2020 and 2022. And if you want to look at also what everyone likes talking about is the grading companies, PSA is finally grading their cards. In 2020, you have to remember PSA was closed for a certain amount of time. And what did that do to the supply initially? The supply was therefore just constant. And the demand was going through the roof. So that definitely helped the cost, not the cost, it definitely helped the sports cards going up. And yeah, they started to open back up, but then because of the COVID rules, the quarantine rules, they weren't able to get through their backlog aggressively. And also, they took in way more cards than they were supposed to. But at the same time, the cost of grading was cheap. Fast forward to today. Yes, you're getting these cards back, you know? I showed you them in my last video. I had about 20 cards. I have a bunch of these 10s over here. That's amazing, right? I'm surprised of getting a 50% gem rate of 10s. Regardless, now the supply is coming back in large amounts. The demand is still there for sports cards if you look at the high end, but the supply is becoming much more greater than the demand. And unless you have cards that are PSA 10s of quality players in the rookie years, and you got it in cheap, you know, if you're buying 2018, 2019, you send them for grading before the pandemic, and you're still holding on to those cards, you're fine, right? You could still sell them. It's a great seller's market for those type of cards, for like Brady, Rodgers, Manning, if you bought low. But like some of these high flyer guys, those cards have crashed hard, big time. And because of all of this, what's, in my opinion, in terms of the supply and demand, it doesn't help people right now. You have to remember, regular service, what's $100 from my understanding? Correct me if I'm wrong. So you have a high price of getting your cards graded. So the flippers, the shoe flippers, they're out of this picture, or they're not aggressively flipping to the extent they used to. And now the supply of cards, it's going to come in the millions. Granted, a lot of it was Pokemon, and I'm not into Pokemon. I do follow some people that are into Pokemon, but okay. A lot of it was Pokemon, but still, there's a lot of sports cards out there, coming back. Pop reports are going up. And that doesn't help. So 2020 versus 2022, the supply of sports cards is not going to help the hobby. So, excuse me. So, my throat's a little dry. So, anyways, if you look at these sports cards, these cards are not as valuable as they were a few years ago. Wow, my wife's cooking something upstairs, getting into my throat. So if you just look at this is going to be detrimental for many of the card holders this year. Granted, if you have high-end cards, those are going to do well, and you bought cheap. So this year, 2020 versus 2022. Yeah, for those individuals that exceed expectations, I've mentioned this before about Verlander, but let's look at a different sport. DeMar DeRozan of the Chicago Bulls has had an outstanding year. His cards were cheap before the season started, and they have gone up because he's hitting game winners left and right. It's just amazing. I don't know how he does it, but he does. So his card values have been going up. So you exceed expectations, those cards are going up. 2020, you had massive speculation. Cards are going up just because some guy had one good game. Now it's more of its consistency. So this reminds me more of a 2019 year. 2019, though, was an environment where interest rates weren't going up. Now we're in an environment where interest rates are going up, slowly headed towards positive interest rates. So that's the thing. So these are the few differences I noticed in 2020 versus 2022. And that's why the cards that I'm buying are just low-end cards. I'm not spending an arm and a leg. It's becoming more challenging, in my opinion, than it was 2018, 2019, 2020. And that's why I'm being a bit more cautious than I was compared to then. I was more aggressive. Once again, I wish I had a YouTube channel at that point so people could see where I'm coming from. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. What do you think are the differences from 2020 and 2022? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later.